The rain came down like a verdict already decided. Sheets of water hammered the empty highway, wind screaming through the trees as if the night itself were angry. Michael Carter tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his old pickup shuddering as it pushed through the storm. In the back seat, 8-year-old Noah slept with his head against a backpack, unaware that this night, this one act of stopping, would change his father's life forever. Michael hadn't planned to be out so late. He never did. Ever since his wife, Anna, passed away 2 years earlier, his world had shrunk to simple routines. Work at the auto shop, dinner with Noah, homework at the kitchen table, prayers before bed. But tonight, a late call from a customer had meant overtime, and now the storm had trapped them on a rural road miles from town. As lightning split the sky, Michael saw something that made his foot hover over the brake. A car pulled over on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking weakly through the rain. "Dad," Noah murmured, half awake, "what's wrong?" "Nothing, buddy," Michael said softly, though his heart was already pounding. He slowed the truck. The sensible voice in his head warned him about stopping in storms, about strangers, about how little margin for error he had left as a single father. But then he saw her, standing outside the car, drenched, struggling with a flat tire, her coat plastered to her frame by the rain. Michael pulled over. She looked up in surprise as he stepped out, the wind nearly tearing the door from his hand. Her face was pale, exhausted, but composed in a way that suggested strength beneath the fear. "I'm so sorry," she called out, her voice almost lost to the storm. "I didn't mean to flag anyone down. My phone died and I can't get the lug nuts loose." "I've got it," Michael said, already grabbing the jack from his truck. "You shouldn't be standing out here." They worked in silence at first, rain soaking through Michael's jacket, his hands numbing as he wrestled with the stubborn bolts. Noah watched from the truck, eyes wide. When the tire finally came off and the spare was secured, the woman let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for hours. "Thank you," she said. "I'm Grace Thompson." "Michael, that's my son Noah," he replied, nodding toward the truck. "You okay to drive now?" Grace hesitated. "Honestly, I don't think so. The engine light came on and it started making a noise before I pulled over." Michael glanced at the dark road stretching endlessly in both directions. The nearest town was still 15 miles away. "You can follow me," he said. "I'll take it slow. There's a diner near my place where you can wait out the storm." Grace studied him, then nodded. "I'd appreciate that." They drove carefully, the storm relentless, until the warm glow of the diner appeared like a promise. Inside, the smell of coffee and fried food wrapped around them, a small island of safety in the chaos outside. Noah slid into a booth, and Grace wrapped her hands around a mug, finally allowing herself to relax. "You didn't have to stop," she said quietly, looking at Michael over the rim of her cup. Michael shrugged. "Someone once stopped for me when I didn't think anyone would. I guess I'm just paying it forward." Grace smiled, but there was something thoughtful in her eyes. "Where are you headed tonight?" "Home," he said. "Always home." They talked while the storm raged on, about Noah's love for drawing, about Michael's struggle to balance work and fatherhood, about Grace's career that kept her traveling more than she liked. She didn't say what she did, and Michael didn't ask. Some nights, it was enough just to be heard. By the time the rain eased, Grace's car still wouldn't start. Michael insisted on driving her to a nearby motel. At the door, she turned to him. "Michael, I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," he said. "You're safe." She watched him walk back to his truck, something heavy and unreadable settling in her chest. 2 weeks later, Michael sat in a courtroom with his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. The auto shop where he worked had been sold, and a dispute over alleged damages had landed him in a civil case he couldn't afford to lose. If the ruling went against him, the fines could bankrupt him. He'd barely slept, barely eaten, trying to be strong for Noah while fear gnawed at him in the dark. "Please rise," the bailiff said. The judge entered, and Michael's breath caught in his throat. It was Grace. She took her seat, composed and distant, her robe a stark contrast to the rain-soaked coat he remembered. For a moment, their eyes met. Recognition flickered, just for a second, before her expression returned to neutral. Michael's heart sank. Of all the judges in the county, it had to be her. The proceedings began. Lawyers spoke in sharp, polished words, painting Michael as careless, irresponsible. He wanted to stand up and shout the truth, that he was a good man who worked hard, that every decision he made was for his son, but the rules of the room held him silent. As testimony unfolded, Grace listened intently, her gaze steady. She asked questions precise, fair, cutting through exaggerations. Michael answered honestly, his voice trembling but clear. He spoke of long hours, of fixing cars the right way even when it cost more time, of trying to keep his life from falling apart after Anna died. When it was over, the courtroom fell into a heavy silence. Grace recessed briefly. Michael bowed his head, whispering a prayer he wasn't sure anyone was listening to. When she returned, her voice was calm but carried weight. She ruled carefully, methodically, citing facts, evidence, and the law. The decision was in Michael's favor. The case was dismissed. A breath Michael didn't realize he'd been holding rushed out of him. Tears burned his eyes. As the room emptied, Grace called his name softly, "Mr. Carter." He approached, unsure what to expect. "I need you to know," she said, her voice lower, now human, "that my ruling was based solely on the merits of the case." "I understand," Michael replied, "and thank you." Grace hesitated, then allowed herself a small smile. "But I won't pretend I forgot that night. The law demands fairness. Life reminds us of grace." Michael nodded, emotion thick in his throat. Outside, the sky was clear, sunlight breaking through clouds that had finally passed. Michael stepped into the warmth, feeling lighter than he had in years. He thought of Noah waiting at home, of the prayer whispered in a storm, of a simple choice to stop when it would have been easier to drive on. Sometimes, fate doesn't announce itself with trumpets. Sometimes it stands on the side of a dark road in the rain, waiting to see who you'll be when no one is watching.